I'll do a brief introduction. This is Matthew Fulks. Most of you probably know Sarah Fulks. His story is that in high school, I think he started mowing somebody's lawn when he was 14 or 15. Since then, he's really kind of turned that into an empire. He's 29. He's traveled the world. He's got 3 separate LLCs going. He's got into real estate. I heard his talk yesterday. He's got a lot of controversial opinions, which I really like, and he expresses them in a very, very clear and excellent way, and he's open to questions. So, this is Mr. Matthew Fulks.
Hey, guys. Thanks, Tim, for inviting me in to teach this. First, Sarah said, Matt, you should go teach this, and I said, I think you're crazy. Then Tim messages me and says something. I thought he was joking. He said 70 minutes. I was like, well, I can do 20. He's like, no, it's 70 minutes. So if I bore you by the end of this, it's not my fault, it's his. But anyhow, what Tim was saying was back when I was about 15, I had started a company. When I was 16, I had LLC'd it. I was sitting here just like you guys, had no real, generally speaking, probably don't have an exact clue what you're going to do when you graduate high school or college. And then it just kept growing, and as you start seeing money come in, it's amazing how that can start changing the way you react with things. And as it kept growing, by the time I was 18, I was running that, and then I was on the fire department also. By the time I was 21, I was a captain on the local fire department down here in Eudora, and I was also running extra board, which is basically when full-time departments hire guys. They hire everybody that's certified. They bring you in for certain days to do 24-hour shifts, see if they like you. If they like you, they'll hire you full-time type deal. So I did that for a while also while growing the business. And then as I hit 21, I was in negotiations to buy out 2 small companies. And when I say small, I mean one of them was $11,000, $15,000 a year, so really, really small. And then the other one was about $150,000 a year. And so with that being said, I was negotiating on one of them, ended up landing it, didn't land the other one, and decided at that time I'm going to go full-time with the company. Because politics and fire department world, I don't know if any of you guys are related to firefighters or not, it can get a little political. I had no interest in that because that's not my personality. You're going to see that very clearly today. I'm not a politician. So with that being said, in my experience, we've taken the company now. I own the lawn and landscape company. We have about 12 guys. We work hand in hand with Ryan Lawn and Tree. I'm sure you guys are probably familiar with who those guys are. We're one of the top referred ones. Larry Ryan actually was my mentor for probably 6 or 7 years, where I would meet with him every year, several times a year, just to discuss questions similar to what we're going to be talking about here today, just anything that might have been on my mind or things that I was having issues with. And if you don't know Larry Ryan started Ryan Lawn and Tree. He was broke, destitute, kind of started it out of need, built it up to a $35 million a year company, which in the lawn care industry, that's a very large company. I think he's ranked as one of the 2nd largest lawn care companies in the U.S. now, and one of the most highly respected, with industry leading on almost everything because of education, knowledge, and what they do. So we focus a lot on doing things like that. You see us, we use the beautiful maroon color like you guys do. You're going to see our trucks maroon. We brand ourselves very similar and act very similar to them. So I just kept doing that and kept growing it, and then it just kept morphing. And before I knew it, I was in trouble, and I owned a company. Along the way, though, I got bored apparently, and I decided let's go ahead and start some real estate companies. Really, the reason I started real estate companies, you guys will find out, is because of some books that I started reading, and it kind of drove me to start one. So eventually I grew it over 3 years into 2 separate companies, and I'll explain a little bit as to why I did that later without boring you to death, because that's just all legal mumbo-jumbo that you guys can learn along the way, or go to a lawyer and he'll figure it out for you. So with that being said, I'm going to roll you guys a video that I find funny, and then I'll talk to you about why I played this particular video. If I don't break your computer again, Tim. Did we download this, or is it going to play?
I hope it plays. If not, who here is like a tech genius?
There's also a very understated but important shot here, and that's this 50-50. It's a good confrontational angle.
I know that the most intelligent way to start making a lot of money is to find a way to get at least $100,000 in debt before you even begin making money. So I decided to go to college. College isn't for most people, it's for all people. If you don't get a degree, you're declaring you want to be homeless, unhappy, and a failure for the rest of your life. Having a college degree has now been the standard for so long that everyone in the workforce has one. So you having one makes you just like everyone else. And at the same time, somehow degree sets you apart from everyone else. And if you don't see the brilliance in how this helps you, then you're not very intelligent. And you clearly didn't go to college. My college degree is social validation that I'm someone. I earned it. And I earned it by paying for it. There's no other ways to verify that I'm an intelligent person capable of success and doing big things in the world. Imagine if people were born with innate brilliance, potential, vision, creativity, and ability. Then we wouldn't need college. But that's not the fantasy world that we live in, from what I'm told. So I think it's important to acknowledge that those innate qualities are only found in university educations. If you don't go to college, there's no chance that you'll have a successful career. Success isn't dependent on hard work, vision, and creativity. It's dependent on the degree you achieve before you start achieving in your career. I can't think of anyone who's successful who doesn't have a degree. Not a single person, especially not anybody that inspires me. What excites me even more than the $100,000 of tuition costs for a degree is all the interest that I have the opportunity to pay on that loan. This adds even more value to my college education because it means I pay more for my education than what my education costs because I can't afford my education. Teachers who only teach a subject rather than actually doing the subject out in the world are the true purveyors of wisdom. They're basically like the wise elders in our society, and they're definitely the wise sages that I'm willing to go into debt for half my life for so that I can learn from them. From early elementary school, I was taught to think that I need to do well in school so that I can get accepted into college so that I can have a successful career. Because that's what I was taught to think. I think that's what I actually think. Therefore, I think that getting a degree is not only a guarantee that I'll have a successful future, but I also think that it's the only way I can have a successful future. And that's a fact. Because there isn't a way to get free information about anything anytime you want it, I think universities are completely justified in charging their customers the prices that they do. Because 30 years ago a college degree would set you apart, it means it still does today. It's just like once upon a time, a horse and buggy was the most effective form of transportation. Then came cars, then came airplanes, but even still to this day, a horse and buggy is the most effective form of transportation. What kind of job do I have now that I'm out of college? I'm unemployed. Last month I had a job for 3 days. I was hired by an 18-year-old tech entrepreneur, but then he said he had to let me go because I lacked the practical skills to get my job done well. He acted like he didn't even know that I have a degree. He probably doesn't even know what a degree is. Probably thinks in Celsius or something. But my prospects are looking good. Here's my new plan. I'm going to take all the skills I learned in my MBA and open a video rental store.
Okay, guys, the reason I showed you that is I think if somebody would have told me back when I was in high school, Matt, you don't have to go to college to be successful, that would have made a huge impact. I think society, I was talking with Tim about this some yesterday, I think society in general just pushes us in a lot of directions because, especially when you're in high school, they push you towards the fact that you've got to go to college or you're not going to be worth something. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not true. I can't tell you how many multi-millionaires that I know that never even went to college. He's being facetious on here, obviously. He's very sarcastic in case you guys haven't watched him on Facebook on other things. But his point, I think, still rings true is that, there's a lot of people in this room that are not academically inclined. Actually, the statistics show that most of you are not. Most of you learn outside of here. You learn practicing your sports rather than you do studying them in a room. You learn practicing your skills and your trades in the field, not through a book. Some of us are academically inclined. Very few of us, though, and we learn very well in books. So I can tell you that I did not go to college, and I did not know that I didn't want to go to college. All I knew is that when I got done with high school, I hated school. I mean, I was probably about 10 times worse than you. I graduated the top 3 in my class, and there was 3 people that graduated in my class. So props to me. But anyhow, the point of that is that when I graduated, I was so tired of school because I went to a little tiny private school. We were doing college level education classes. I mean, when I was writing papers, it was 30 and 35 page papers. So, yeah. 10 font, double space, yeah, it was great. But that's what I was doing, so I had no desire to go to college. But I knew I liked working, and I knew I learned well doing things in the field and actually experiencing it. The other thing I've noticed too is I actually have a whole group of guys. Every single guy that works for me right now has no college degree. And what is people in this room, can somebody tell me roughly what they think what would you think is a decent salary when you were to when you graduate college or whatever? What do you think a decent salary is? Does anybody have a concept of it? Anybody can raise their hand, just say it.
45.
Okay. Does anybody have another one that they think?
75.
75, okay. Anybody else? So they're all, yeah, Tim?
Median income in the United States is $50,000. In other words, half the people are below that, half the people are above that. Just
Yep.
to let you know.
That is correct. We have guys working for me now that make $45,000 a year. We don't have college education, but we do teach each other, and we do continue to focus on that. So what you take from this class, I hope, is just a couple of things. I'll point out a couple of things I want you to take from it, but really do what it is that you have a passion for. Don't let your parents influence you to push you on to the things that they want you to do. I see that all the time too. They push you on to do sports because they didn't get to do sports in high school, or they push you on to do sports because they think it's going to get you that glorious job at career level in football. How many people actually make it into pro football? You'd be better off spending a little time studying this and you'd be a lot further along. And then on top of that, how many pro football players go broke because they don't know anything about this? And how many of us learned about it? You guys have an awesome opportunity, by the way. And Sarah told me I was extremely jealous that you guys have this. And what I was talking about with Mike back here was really cool. He's actually teaching you something, and this was the other facetious joke this guy made. He's teaching you something he actually does. How many teachers do you know that actually do what it is they're teaching you? Not a lot. And what's cool about Tim is Tim also does things in stocks and mutual funds and stuff. He deals with paper assets. So when he's teaching you, he's not just simply teaching you that he read out of a textbook. So pay attention to what they say, because you don't want to pay attention to the wrong guy. Personal finance is a mindset. You don't invest with money, you invest with your mind. That really is true. It has to do with anything in your life. If you don't want to do it, you think you're going to do it, I could twist your arm all day long and tell you need to get up. You all have parents that probably still do the same thing. Heck, some of you guys might even have parents that do what my parents did and had to come throw water on me in the morning to get me out of bed. So you're not going to do it if you don't want to do it. If you don't want to learn anything in this class today, you're not going to learn anything in this class today. It's that simple. So you've heard the expression, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. That's true. Can someone explain to me the difference between an asset and a liability?
They are opposites.
Okay.
Oh, wait. Sorry, I think I misunderstood the question for a second there.
Do you know what an asset is?
Yeah.
Okay.
An asset is a thing that you have that has value that isn't necessarily money.
Okay. Does anybody know what a liability is?
Something that will lose you money.
There you go. This kid gets a book. Pass that back to him. This book that I'm handing out right now is the reason that I teach very controversial things, on top of the fact that I didn't do anything traditionally. I still don't. That book is written by Robert Kiyosaki. How many of you guys heard of Dave Ramsey? Everybody's heard of Dave Ramsey. Yeah. Okay. Well, believe it or not, Dave Ramsey and Robert Kiyosaki are really good friends, but they teach contrasting ideologies. They're respectful of each other because I think there's a point and a purpose to Dave Ramsey, and then I think there's a point and a purpose to what Robert Kiyosaki talks. My example of Dave Ramsey is Dave Ramsey teaches people how to get control of their money. Then I would tell you, once you learn how to get control of your money, you switch over to a guy like this, and you start changing up your game, how you invest, how you spend your money. So I've never studied Dave Ramsey. I've just always studied Robert Kiyosaki, because Robert's big thing is just create more assets. You want that yacht one day? Create assets. You want the BMW, the new Audi, whatever? Create assets. Okay? So we're going to talk really simply. He said it simply, but assets is something that puts money in your pocket. That is the most simple definition of assets. And I say this because he is right, and we'll go through some stuff where assets also are just things that hold value. I'll show you that in a little bit. But what I talk to you guys about this about is the same reason I talk to my guys. We're all pretty dang young. I'm not a whole lot, well, I take that back. I'm a lot older than you, but I'm still young, okay? But, so I say put money in your pocket. And the reason I say that is because that gives you more money to spend on more assets. I'm not saying go put a little bit of money in your pocket and then go out and blow it all at the bar when you turn 21. That's not the point of this. And a liability takes money out of your pocket. So Robert's big thing, which your parents probably heard him when he actually became popular, because he became popular in the, I think, mid-'80s. And the first thing that he became popular on was he said, your house is not an asset. People got mad. Because everybody in the U.S. loves their house. We love our house. It's like our nest egg. And it's the highest costing thing the United States population owns is their house. So we take it very personally. If I walked up to you and said, your house color sucks, you'd probably get upset with me. So I don't say that when I'm on my sales meeting, even if it does stink. But he said that, and that was really controversial. So there's 4 main types of asset groups. Investment real estate, income generating is how I would specify that. You're going to have business, self-employed, that's me. That's an asset. So as I build a business, the business grows in value. So that's an asset to me. There's papers, stocks. You guys can ask me anything about stocks. I probably couldn't tell you a thing about them. It's not my forte yet. Eventually I will study them some, but right now I'm putting my energy into these 2. So, and then we've got commodities. I know a little bit about commodities. Now commodities are things like gold, silver, oil, and crops. Does anybody know something interesting about silver nowadays? Which one do you think in the world, is there more discovered silver or more discovered gold in the world?
Gold.
Is there more gold on the surface of the earth than there is of silver? Which one is there more of? More gold? Correct. But ironically, what does gold trade for an ounce roughly? Does anybody know? About $1,400, $1,450 per troy ounce right now. But does anybody know anything interesting about silver that is something new that's come in with technology? Silver is actually in all your guys' smartphones.
Yeah.
Yep,
Silver is used in circuits.
that's correct. And it also disappears. He sounds like he knows about it. So it actually burns. So the interesting thing that's come about with silver, as opposed to where it used to just be used monetarily as a means of trade, it's actually now being used up in your phones and technology, and there's less silver on the face of the earth than there is gold. So what makes this an interesting commodity is this has switched over from means of trade to an actual commodity now. It's necessary. So this is things, also crops are a commodity. I put in here intentionally on your liabilities, personal, 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 and personal. Okay? Guess what? If I own a house for my real estate company, do you think that's a liability or an asset? Okay? If I own a car for my personal self, do you think it's a liability or an asset? Exactly. Memberships. I put this one on here. Yeah?
If you have like one of those things paid off, is that still, it doesn't make any money, so it's an asset now, or like it's a switch?
Which kind of thing?
Like if you pay your car off and you own it now, like is that an asset? Or?
Technically, it would be in your asset column because you don't owe on it. I would probably be cautious with that because it's still gonna. Odds are, the longer you hold it, you're gonna have to fix something with it also.
Yeah, they call that a depreciating asset
Yeah.
because every car basically goes to zero over time because they turn into junk. And they do suck up a lot of money in repairs and fuel.
Mm-hmm. And if you want to see that, you can come hang out with my fleet, and I'll give you the bill once, and you'll want to go back to school in a heartbeat. Memberships. I put memberships because I bet you about everybody in here has a membership to Spotify or some game that we have a membership to. So if you took everybody in here and you even said, let's say $10 a month, I think my Spotify cost me like $8 a month or something like that. If we even said $8 a month times however many guys are in here, how much money do we have racked up in here on just one of our memberships? So this is becoming a big thing nowadays too, because all businesses are almost switching over to memberships. All of our accounting software, all of our route management software, they're not even charging you on a yearly basis now, and you don't even buy the program. They don't support it anymore. They'll just get rid of the old programs and not even support them, and now you're required to do memberships. So that's why I put that in there. Credit cards. Credit cards are dangerous. I can tell you that's where I took Dave Ramsey, and I learned from that because when I was younger, I was not good with money. I'm still not great with it, believe it or not. I'm still learning. It's a lifelong process to continue to get better with things. But I was real hesitant about these because they're giving you a lot of money at a young age that you can go blow on something that you don't need. Yeah. Girls all the way from whatever it is you guys might, I'm terrible with girls, even though I have 4 sisters, I'm sorry. But my sister would want to go buy clothes, and then my brother would want to go buy a gun, or whatever the case is, and before you know it, you've got $10,000 in credit card debt, and it's insane. So be very careful with those. Which is a clear asset?
Fulks.
One on the right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why would you think that would be a clear asset immediately?
That was like advertising.
Mm-hmm. Advertising, and you can tell clearly that it's made to make money. This one here is probably somebody's personal truck that they just bought. How many people do you know also that really need a truck? Could they drive a car? Yeah. Very few people really need a truck. But we sell the heck out of them in the U.S. You try to sell that in Europe, good luck, man. Which cell phone is a clear asset here?
Right.
One on the right. Why?
Using
For business.
Exactly. Actually, here's an interesting one for you guys. I would tell you that you can tell a lot by somebody nowadays what their home screen has on it. Which apps have you moved to your home screen? If you got Clash of Clans and everything else on your home screen, you're probably using that phone more for a liability than you are an asset. My nieces hate me because my nieces and nephews, all like 25 of them already, believe it or not, because they always ask Uncle Matt if they can get on my phone. I'm like, I don't have any games for you guys. Yeah.
But what if the only thing on my home screen is folders that contain apps?
Oh, God. All right, I'm going to make a sub-picture here for the next one. Yeah. So what I've got on my home screen is I've got Facebook because we have our company put on here. I've got Google Drive because I can operate the company now from anywhere in the world with technology. Hangouts, Basecamp, which is our marketing company, photos. I've got all my weather apps. I've got radio podcast. You guys are in a new generation where we can listen to all these really cool podcasts now. Binance, which is what talks about basically, it's just a trading app for oh my gosh, cryptocurrencies and stuff, so I was watching some of that. TED Talks, you guys probably heard of those. So that's what my home screen looks like. Then my second home screen is reflected with real estate. Yeah.
If you wanted to make your business and you wanted to have a separate phone for that business, would you recommend like a simple phone, like a flip phone, or like a smartphone?
Always smart, because everything in the world's moving that way. I'm not a tech-based person, but I will tell you that the world's moving that way whether we like it or not. And so you might as well stick up with it. So, and I probably wouldn't get 2 phones because all you're doing is creating one more thing for you to have to carry, one more thing for you to have to charge, and also one more thing for you to pay for. So I probably would just keep it all on one phone. And the way that these new phones are working, I'm sure you guys are familiar with like Google, how you can switch and toggle between accounts now on the same exact email. So you can run multiple businesses now from one phone. So that's how I would do it. Which one's a clue? Yeah.
One on the left.
Perfect. I like you. Dude, that's my house. No, I'm just kidding. Why the one on the right then is, what do you think of when you see this?
Well, I see an opportunity to make profit because you can sell 3 of those within one.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. Or you can rent the other side. Exactly. Perfect. Which one's the asset? Which one?
Left.
Who's left?
Crop.
Not very confident. Which one's on the right? Who thinks the right? They both are, guys. So they're both assets. This one is actually a highly up-and-coming asset. This is something that I listen to a lot of podcasts on right now. It's cropland. Actually, he owns land. Who's making more land? Until God drops a meteorite on top of us and creates more land, there ain't any more coming. So, and the population of the world just keeps going up. Do you guys have any questions so far? No? Okay. All right.
I mean, technically more land is produced by volcanoes at sea.
True. Can someone describe to me what cash flow is? Does anybody know what cash flow is? Yeah.
Money constantly coming into your business.
Mm-hmm. After money coming into your business after what?
Taxes.
Yep, that's one of the line items that would come out. After expenses is what it is. Here you go. I'm handing out books for the question. The two things I want you guys to remember is assets, liabilities, and cash flow. I think those are probably some of the most important things. Because as young people, we always want to go out there, and the first thing we want to do is buy all the cool things in life. And it's great. But if you create some assets at a young age, you can buy all those cool things for the rest of your life. But if you don't do that, then you're gonna fall. So cash flow puts money into your pocket, but cash flow is what's left over after all your bills are paid. So when you guys start learning how to read like a profit and loss statement eventually, at the very bottom it's going to show you the cash flow. Well, that's after you take in all your income, then you take out your expenses, and that's what cash flow is. You want cash flow. If you're not cash flowing, you're the United States Federal Reserve and you're just bankrupt, but you can print money. So, but unfortunately, the beautiful thing about them nowadays is they don't even print money. They sit at their computer at a desk similar to this, and they just add a zero digitally. So it's great. We save all the money on printing, so it's worth it. Assets must cash flow or store value or appreciate in value. So this goes to what one of these guys said earlier, like silver, for instance, and gold. They don't really cash flow physical money into your pocket, but they do store value. So keep that in mind. That is also what an asset is, but that's a simple one. This is an interesting concept that Robert Kiyosaki came up with right here, and this is your 4 quadrants of where it is all of us in this room fall into. And this talks about how you make your money. How do you make your money in life? So right here is an employee. This is what most people are. I think it's estimated, Tim and I were talking about, I think estimated 95% of the United States population falls into an employee category. This is self-employed. This is guys like me. Also stands for specialist. So you're a specialist, and I'm a specialist because I have to be there in order for my company to function. It's not big enough for me to walk away and have it continue to function. I still have to go sign loan docs, for instance. I still have to sign the tax paperwork. I don't have all these fail-safes in place yet. It takes a little while. B is a business owner. This is your big business owners. Typically 500 people or more working for them. So this is going to be guys like Steve Jobs that you would think about here. I is investors. This is guys that you would think about with Warren Buffett. Guys like Shark Tank. You guys ever watch Shark Tank? Mm-hmm. Yeah. That one's a fun show, but that's essentially what these guys are. They're just buying companies. They're not actually, you think they're in that company manufacturing that product in that line? No, they're just reading their profit and loss statement at the end of every quarter. And they just want to make sure that it's kicking them back 20 or 25% profit every single month. And that's what they're looking at. They're an investor. So again, just to recap this, an employee is earned income. Actually, let me rephrase that and go back to this. What do you see right here? Active and passive income. These are your 2 ways that you'll make money in your life. You're either going to make it by actively having to be there. These guys have to be there. If they don't show up for work, most of our parents fall into this category. If they don't show up for work because they get sick, they don't get paid. Or if they don't show up for work, they also get fired. So this is where they fall. This is called passive. You don't have to show up to your job. You make money while you sleep. And nothing is better than counting dollar signs at night instead of sheep. Trust me. So this is an employee. They have to earn money by working for someone else typically. Self-employed or generally your specialist. You can tell by this picture she probably owns her own little coffee shop. Really good coffee, but she's got to be there all the time to make sure it's running. It's not Starbucks. This right here, as everybody knows, is getting to be the first trillionaire in the world, estimated trillionaire. So if you guys can count that high in like 7 or 8 days, I'll take you on I'll pay for you and your family to go to a trip. So this is Jim Rogers, 300 million. He just travels around the world and buys up stuff, kind of like Shark Tank. And he just owns stocks in a bunch of companies. Which one would you rather be, earned or passive, do you think? Passive. Passive gives you guys freedom. Jim was telling you just a little bit. So it took me about 10 years, 11 years, till I got to the point in business where I could go do some stuff. And in the last 14 months, I've been to New Zealand for 17 days. I've been to San Diego. I've been to New Year's Eve in New York. I've been to Mexico. I've been to Canada for 2 weeks. I've had friends come to visit me from those locations for our 3rd of July party that we throw. And I have a trip planned to Canada here in the next 2 months, as well as Tennessee in the next 30 days. So this is what passive does for you, though. Passive starts to create this ability. Okay? And we'll get more into detail on that. Here's the fun part about passive. So I was going to tell you some stuff. I don't know what other guys are teaching you and stuff, but really what the trick is with passive is you can go make $1 million and you could pay in $500,000, or you can make $1 million and pay in $800,000. Which one would you rather do? And would you rather work harder or smarter? So if you want to go out there and break your back every single day, having to pick up a shovel and constantly do that. Now, I'm not saying don't do that. I'm saying do that 10, 15 years as you're working your way to where you don't have to do that. All right? Work your way towards this passive. And here's the benefits of it. If you're working as an earned income owner, so myself, self-employed, or employees, you're going to pay 10 to 35% in your taxes immediately. Now, these are estimates. The new tax law that came into effect is changing some of this, but I'm just going to give you a rough ball. And then you also are paying in 14% of your paycheck is going to Social Security and Medicare. You guys think you're going to see Social Security and Medicare? Raise your hands if you do. You might. You might. If they spend another $1 trillion to keep it going, you might. So you're going to have no benefits such as write-offs. I'll talk with you about write-offs, but that computer that's sitting right there, if I own a business like the one that's over there, and I'm needing a computer for business, and let's say I use that computer 80% of the time for business, but I also want to use it a little bit for personal. Let's say the computer for simple math cost $1,000. $800 of that dollars I can write it off as a business expense, which goes against what I will have to pay in taxes. Okay? So now I've got a computer to handle my personal life stuff, and I've also got it for business, but I didn't have to spend the full $1,000 in my personal life. We'll explain a little bit more about that here in a little bit. Taxes are taken out before you get paid. How many of you guys have a job right now? Most of you in here do. So with that being said, you guys all get W-2s. You probably just recently got yours. You filed your W-2, and you're going to get back a return most likely, right? From the federal government or the state, you'll probably get back a few dollars most likely. Are you guys familiar with that? Okay. So do you think you spend your money better, or do you think the federal government spends your money better? Which one do you think has the most knowledge about your local area, what's going on in your local area, what the country really needs? Do you think it's the politicians right now, or you? I would bet you money it's you guys. I'd bet the farm, and I don't even own a farm. But I guarantee you, you guys know better. So if you let them take your taxes first, that's money you can't spend on investments. So as a business owner, what's important about this is that some of us in the business world, depending on the profit margins you make, we might have $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in taxes that we have to pay in large checks to the government. But if I get a hold of that for 12 or 14 months before I write that check, and I go spend $50,000 now on an investment in January, and I don't have to pay for that tax bill until March of the next year, can you imagine how much money you can make with that now? Now, I'm not saying I'm going to repeat this the same thing I did yesterday. Do not go to your employer and say, hey, I want to stop having taxes withheld, because you need to understand what you're going to invest in first. If you don't have a goal or a plan for that, don't go do that, or you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. Because then suddenly the end of the year is going to come, and you're going to owe the federal government $1,000, and you're going to be like, I'm going to have to go sell my kidney. And that's not cool, apparently. So I tried it. Portfolio. So this is things like what Tim invests in papers. This is also in real estate. This goes across the board in different stuff. But you're going to have 20%. So which would you rather have, 20 or 35? Or 20 to 10 to 35? Obviously 20. Not subject to Social Security, so that saves you 14% automatically. Professional investors, you can write off your business travel, your trainings, assets. I spent like probably $4,000 last year on personal development, just going to different classes that people were hosting that I went to. I got to write that off. If you as an employee go, a lot of times you cannot write that off. All right, so taxes are taken out later. Passive income is 10 to 15%. So remember how I said keep building towards passive? I don't know if you guys pay attention to political platforms very much, especially this last election that was very up in arms We're not going to talk about politics, but the point is one of the things you would hear is you'd be like, well, this guy's not paying his fair share in taxes, okay? What's happening is that he's worked his money smart. He's started to earn passive, and other politicians are earned. And so he's not doing anything illegal or wrong that's not within the legal system. He simply is earning passive money instead of earned income money, okay? So you can make money while you sleep. Yep.
Do they recognize that, though? That he's on the passive side?
Oh, yeah, they know it. It's just all political strings.
So they try to, like, get them on their own side of paying taxes for, like...
They're just using it, really what they're using it as is just political leverage to make the general public who doesn't typically read any of this believe that he's dodging taxes, when in fact he's actually played his and created more assets and more value for the country most of the time. If he's on the passive side, most of the time they've created more value for the country because they own more investments throughout the country. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on earn versus passive? No? Okay. Let's see here. Hey, Tim. Or you, Tim? No, use Microsoft.
Yeah, close the dictionary thing. Hopefully this will open. Select all. Oops.
All right. Do you know how to use these? What are you trying to do? Perfect.
You could highlight
He's
it
trying
all.
to play
Yeah,
that.
I'm a
YouTube
Microsoft guy, so
I can help.
punch that up and just push play on it.
You could just highlight it all and then copy the URL.
Mine's like the quick drags. I'm used to Microsoft. I started getting good at Apple.
Johnny, can you get him to be able to play that?
Okay. We'll play the video in a little bit if you know how to download it.
It might already be in my downloads. If you go down, because we downloaded it yesterday.
How do teachers get
Go to my
restricted?
downloads. A little smiley face at the bottom of the screen.
Clear the
On
Finder.
left.
Go to
On
the
left.
Go to the Finder, Jack.
Then go to
time.
downloads. Then it'll be in yesterday.
There you
That's
go.
probably it.
Yep.
Yep, that's it.
Are you guys familiar with Seinfeld?
Yes.
No?
Yes.
Okay, one guy. Sorry, it's more of the older generation, but this is the best definition right here.
That's right. Now it looks like it was broken during shipping, and I insured it for $400. You're supposed to give me a refund. Get a refund? Your warranty expired 2 weeks ago. We're gonna make the post office pay for my new stereo now? It's a write-off. How is it a write-off? They just write it off. Write it off what? Jerry, all these big companies, they write off everything. You don't even know what a write-off is. No, I don't. And then the was, right? The last 20 seconds of my life, buddy.
There's the definition of a write-off in Hollywood terms. Okay, guys, here's a real brief example of what it is if you're talking about earn versus passive. And again, this comes to how hard do you want to work as you grow up in life. I didn't learn any of this when I was younger. And can you imagine if you would have learned this, how much money you could save at your guys' age going forward, as far as what you can invest and how quickly you can get out of the rat race. The rat race is what's referred to as you constantly have debt, you're constantly paying bills, you can never get ahead. And most of our families, whether you guys even know it or not, a lot of your parents are probably in this, and they know it, they just don't tell you that. So the reality is it's like, I got Invisalign here about 9 months ago. It's $4,500 for Invisalign. Guess what? My Invisalign gets done, and there's another thing that I'm probably going to have to do. Every single time I get rid of something, there's something else that pops up. That's called the rat race. So how do you get out of the rat race? You create more passive income to make you money while you sleep, so that way those bills automatically get paid, all right? To the first guy back there, yes, I was waiting for it. Catch. light sleepers. All right. So anyhow, 75,000. If you have 150 and you take out roughly 50%, you've got 75,000. So you've made only 75. If you have 150,000 and you take out the passive income tax, which is about 20%, you're going to have $120,000 of cash flow in your pocket. So which would you rather lose? You want to say it, I can see it. You want the passive. So here's an example, a real brief example, guys, of what cash flow looks like if you're looking at, I'm just using a house as an example. This is a real simple one. So if you rent something for $1,200 and you have a mortgage payment of $720, insurance of $70, taxes of $100, maintenance and vacancies of $144, so this will be like where you pay your property management company right here, you would have a total expenses of $1,034, which means you're cash flowing $166 a month. Take 166 now, times 12, is what? Almost 2,000 something dollars. That's one house. So that's what you make, and you can make this right here at 0% tax, which means this is money you actually put in your pocket that the government doesn't touch, and you get to spend on whatever you want. I recommend you spend that on another asset. So this is a simple example of what cash flow is, though. You get into other businesses, it might look a little bit more lengthy, but that's a simple example of what cash flow is, okay? Here's a good one. How do you make $1 million in the stock market? You start with 2. Figured Tim would appreciate that one. Here's something that I want to talk to you guys about. You guys are in the whole new generation. I honestly believe you guys are in probably one of the most fascinating generations that we're going to see. I think the face of the world is going to change over the next 100 years. I'm very confident in it, actually, because I grew up when we had just started all the video games. I'll use that as an example. You know, we logged in through DOS system. I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard of that. It looked like the background, like I was writing code. And I would log in through that, and I would play games on that. Well, since that time, we've all come along and look at all the stuff we have at our fingertips. What makes this interesting, though, and what I think you guys will find fun, is that all of this stuff allows you to run a business from anywhere in the world. I sold $25,000 in jobs at a landscape company while sitting on a beach in Mexico. That's not a joke. That's what I did. That's what technology does. QuickBooks is a finance management, for instance. You can manage that from anywhere in the world. Jobber is our operating system that we use at our company. I can manage routes, see exactly what each crew member is supposed to do from anywhere in the world. I can change things, design quotes through this. This is Google Maps. You can build pin maps of this to show you locations, which is going to help you out with marketing, which Mike will talk to you more about, I'm sure, as the years go on. This is just the tip of the iceberg as to what's out there. You guys have so many opportunities to be able to do so much fun stuff in your life while working. So why have an office at the office? If you can learn the discipline of working anywhere in the world, then you guys can work anywhere in the world, and everybody will be jealous of you because they'll be like, how are you doing that? Well, it's not, there's no science behind it. It's just this. You don't have to know how those systems are built. You just have to know how to use them. So follow the roadmap. What this mostly is what I was teaching you before this was the fact that those rules that I was talking about with passive and earned income, those are not my rules. Those are the United States federal government's rules. And so the point of this was Robert Kiyosaki is a tax advisor that works for him. And his point was follow the roadmap. They always put a map down for you to follow, something that if you pay attention to it, you're going to make money. All right, so when you find business, what you want to do is you want to try and follow the business that they're incentivizing. What other industry can you guys guess are they incentivizing a lot over the last 40 years, and what do you always hear about? What?
Technology.
Technology is a little bit incentivized. I'm looking for a different one.
Agriculture.
Yeah, agriculture is incentivized, and also energy sector. So if you're looking at that, you're going to look at oil. Oil's heavily tax incentivized in most cases. So most guys actually invest in oil when they start making a lot of money. They don't actually invest in it to make money. They actually invest in it for the tax breaks, to protect their money. When you start learning how to make money, you got to eventually learn how to protect it, because there's somebody out there that always wants to take your money. From your lawyer to your best friend, and who do you think the worst one of them all is?
Your best friend.
your family. Once you start learning how to make it, you better be good at saying no when you need to say no, because they're always going to be knocking. And that's not to be mean, but the reality is how many of you guys have handed somebody something and they don't appreciate it? Lots of times. About everybody in here has experienced that. I guarantee it. You've handed somebody something because they asked for it and they didn't appreciate it. And so, can you imagine when you start handing them money? Same problem. You have to earn what you have in life. Contrary to what the new generation sometimes does think, is life is earned, and it is tough. So, with that being said, here's some other cool things that is coming out that you guys can do from anywhere in the world, and cheap. It's unbelievable what you guys can do. Like, if I would have been smart, I would have sold my business 2 years ago and started doing this kind of stuff. You guys have seen the videos on like Facebook, for instance, where I use this one because everybody seems to have seen it, that black mask that they put on and then they peel it off and it's got like all the pores. Did you know that's actually a kid that invented that video for that product, and all he did was invented the video and created an e-commerce section where somebody logs in, buys the product through his section. He never actually makes the product, never touches the product. That order gets direct shipped to the warehouse. Let's say Amazon, for instance. Amazon ships it out, and he gets a cut of that. He never touched it, and he makes money. So that's an idea of e-commerce. That's a simple idea. You guys can do this, and you can create multiple streams of passive income. Small amounts here and there add up to a lot. And so if you create those little tiny things along the way, you guys can do all sorts of crazy things in your life. Here's another idea of passive income. These are becoming popular because they're healthy, and we're all becoming a little bit more healthy conscious nowadays. Which is not a bad thing. Obviously, I'm still working my way to it, but, we'll get there. This one here, this is Facebook. This is kind of what I was talking about. They're not necessarily manufacturing this cake, by the way. They're simply letting you buy it through their creativity. They built the marketing platform for it. You thought it looked cool. You bought it. They never made that cake. They just shipped it to you. This is a really cool one. Does anybody know how apps work in here as far as like how the back side of this works on the business side? So are you familiar with websites now, how you can get on, you can build your own website? Because it's got what they refer to as the wireframe. And then you just get in there and you're like, well, I'm going to put a picture here and I'm going to put a little word here and a picture here and a video there. And bam, you've got a website. Okay, these are turning out to be the same thing. I actually went to a conference in California on mobile apps, and it was a mobile app company with a guy that's actually younger than me and owns about a $100 million a year mobile app company now. He's insane. But what he does is he leases the background. And then all these other guys, like you guys, can get in there and you can just start building apps for companies. But what's cool about this is you charge my company. Let's say you wanted to build an app for me. You would come to me and say, Matt, I'll build you the app for $500. But then $200 a month is what your maintenance fee is going to be on it. So now I pay you $200 a month. You might only touch my app once that year. You might have to get on there and never update it. So that's passive income. That's income you're making while you're sleeping and not having to worry about it. Does anybody have any questions on any of that? Actually, I'd be interested to know, does anybody have any other cool like tech stuff that you can make money on that I'm unaware of? I always find it fun to see what kind of tech stuff it is that's out there. Does anybody know? I mentioned YouTube channels. Apparently that's not cool to use anymore, so I deleted it in case you didn't notice. Yeah, because apparently YouTube channels are a thing of the past, so I don't know what's coming up.
It's not that they're a thing of the past. It's that everyone knows about them by this point, and they're kind of obvious, I would assume.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the trick. You guys are going to have the chance to discover. I think the last statistic I heard, there was only about 5 to 10% of the world's digital space has been taken by businesses. Imagine the opportunity that each one of you has sitting in this room now for acquiring the digital world. We're moving everything digital. You guys have an empire to take over. I mean an empire. I'm talking about you're going to be the guys that can go out there and compete with Goldman Sachs, guys that have been around for hundreds of years even, because you're at a new generation. We're at a turning point in society, in my opinion. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about loans and how do you get capital for doing different things, because I think this was one of the things that nobody ever taught me when I was younger. The first thing everybody thinks about is what? Banks. Everybody always thinks, well, you got to go to a bank to get money. Well, that's not true at all. So But the interesting thing about banks is I can get somebody to lend up to 80 to 97% of what it is I want to do. That makes it fun. Who wants to put money in? Not me. So private lenders. These are guys like equity funds, angel investors. Have you guys heard about these? Similar to what the sharks would be. They're lending for portions of a business, or they're lending at a very high interest rate. Okay. Then you've got seller carrybacks. Let's say that, what's your name?
Nick.
Nick?
Yeah.
Let's say Nick owns a house, and he owns a $100,000 house. And I want to buy the house from Nick, but I don't have $100,000. Or let's say I have the bank willing to lend me $80,000, but I don't have the $20,000 I need for the down payment to the bank. So Nick now decides, you know what, Matt, you look trustworthy. I've seen your financial statements. I know your family. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to carry back $20,000. So now the bank writes Nick a check for $80,000, and Nick's going to let me pay him back the $20,000 over a few months. So that's how I got into the deal now with zero money down. So when you're younger, this is important to understand the special financing. And here's the reason why. Most banks don't like you. They don't trust you. You have nothing for them to lean on. You don't have a credit report. You don't have a rent passed. So the only way you're going to get things is if you have cosigners. I didn't have a cosigner. My parents went bankrupt. So I didn't have that. So I had to start learning how do I get money elsewhere.
What does that stand for, OPM?
Thank you. Other people's money. How do you use other people's money? So what becomes interesting about this is where you start learning how to be creative with your financing. You don't have to always save up that money. How hard is it for everybody in this room even to save up even $2,000 or $3,000? Can you imagine how many years it's going to take you to save up $20,000 or $40,000? Okay, so now think about how you can be creative with some of this. Private investors, this is like, let's say that I want to borrow some money from my sister because I found a really great deal on a house. And I borrow, let's say, $30,000 from her, and I say I'll pay you back when the remodel's done, and I'll pay you back at a 7% interest rate or whatever you come up with that she agrees on. That's what a private investor is. Okay, this one here, 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 and this one here, and I'm sorry, not this one, not the private lenders. All the other ones I've done. So I'm not teaching you something I haven't done. This is something I believe in teaching you because I've had to use these to get creative with things. The last deal that I did was a seller carryback. The deal I'm working on right now is a seller carryback. I went in there and I sit with the owner of he's like a $30 million a year owner. It was probably one of the most intimidating things I've done in my life because I'm sitting there and he brings in his actual accountant that works at his office, his head accountant. He brings in his lawyer, and then he brings in his head of operations, and I'm sitting there about this big, and they're sitting at the other end of this conference table just looking at me, and all he did the entire meeting was just look at me. He didn't do anything else. He didn't say anything. They asked all the questions. He just sat there and looked at me. What do you think he was looking for? One of the biggest things in business that you need to be trustworthy. You got to be trustworthy. They got to believe in you. You got to believe in yourselves too. But the only way you're going to get them to believe in you is for you to believe in yourself. All right? So we ended up making the deal go through. It almost fell through because my bank messed up. That's why I try not to do the banks. I like dealing with people that actually deal with this kind of stuff if I can. Okay? Government tax credits. These are things like, old historic neighborhoods. Like, are you guys familiar with the new Cerner complex that's going up over there on Bannister Mall? Mm-hmm. It's going to be about $1 billion complex, and they're looking to move about 12,000 jobs into that development over there. So, yeah, it's huge. It was like us competing for Amazon. Were you guys familiar with the fact that Amazon was looking at moving here? What? I think we lost the bid for it. Amazon was trying to move 15,000 jobs here.
Different location.
Different location? They chose a different spot? Yeah. So they were looking to move about 15,000 jobs here. But one of the things that corporations like that and other guys do is they look at the area and they say, can somebody tax incentivize me? So if I don't have to pay property tax on $1 billion in real estate for the next 10 years, you think I'm going to move that business here? Probably. You're talking about a lot of money. Cash flow, this is what I was talking about the whole time, what I keep harping on right here. Cash flow is how you keep reinvesting it back into yourself, okay? Does anybody have any questions on any of the banking stuff, the simple stuff? Okay, cool. Because I'm not very good with that stuff. Things to consider. You guys need teams. You're going to want a bookkeeper. You're going to want an accountant. And lawyer might be a dirty word, but you're going to want one. You never know when you're going to need them. And the other thing that you want to do is look for the lawyer that you are going to need too. Don't just go hire a lawyer. There's lawyers that specialize in different things. Like if you're doing real estate, you would go look for a real estate lawyer. Okay? Not a divorce attorney. That just that really doesn't change. And then the most important one is anyone that isn't you. You got to know as a business owner and as an individual period, if you guys get good at management, let's say you don't go into business owner, I hope you all do. We desperately need you to. The world is craving for entrepreneurs right now. We are losing the battle, and we've got to have more because we come up with the most creative ideas. We create the most jobs in the United States, and we create the most jobs in the world. And we have to have you. So I'm really hoping that you guys do because we desperately need you to do it. And it's not an easy task, but it is fun. Anyone that isn't you, what I'm looking for is guys that do what I'm not good at. I'm not good at accounting. That's not my specialty. I don't read numbers real well, believe it or not. I'm definitely not good as a lawyer. You wouldn't want me sitting in the room. The judge would throw me out for contempt in about 60 seconds. Probably, because I'd come up with something smart Alec to say, and he would just not appreciate that. Bookkeeper, I've got an office manager. That's what she does. Some of the stuff that eats up a lot of time. Most of the time, the business owners are actually the guys that are like what you see with Steve Jobs and stuff. Sometimes they're the guys that just have the idea and know how to motivate people to fulfill the idea. And that's a lot of times what you find with business owners. That's why, like, you look at Amazon and Steve Jobs and everything. What do you think he did for the last part of his life? He went around and gave talks. And he just talked to people about ideas and success and motivated him, his employees, and the world. And so that's what a lot of business owning becomes eventually. You don't start that way 9 out of 10 times. I will tell you, you're going to have to pick up the shovel. So we'll talk real briefly on this. So these are structures of corporations that you're going to have to do. And what I'm going through is a couple of things that you're going to want to look at if you start a business. So like the bookkeepers, the lawyers, the accountants. This is a type of legal structure. This stands for Limited Liability Corporation. This is what most entities in the U.S. are because we're all small companies. And in short, what this does, and the reason you want to secure yourself as an entity, especially as a younger guy, this is why you heard me say that I got LLC when I was 16. The reason being is because if somebody came and sued me, let's say that my mower shot a rock and hit somebody in the head and they had to go to the hospital. Well, that somebody, in the U.S. especially, is probably going to come sue me. So if they come sue me, what this does is this helps them that when they sue me, they can only take my business assets. They can't go after my personal assets, okay? So what that becomes important, especially if you're younger, is that means they can't go take my parents' house, because that wouldn't be cool. So this is essentially what you're starting your corporations for. Think of it first as protection for you. And then if you go down and you go into things like C corporations and S corporations, we're not going to focus a lot on these. But if we go into these, then what they are is they're just based off of like what's your income level at the business, how do you have shareholders or do you not have shareholders, and your lawyer is going to help and your accountant paired together is going to tell you what you want to do here. So like my company, for instance, we started with an LLC. This year, we're getting ready to either move to an S Corp or a C Corporation. And the lawyer and accountant are talking about how they want to do that. And it all depends on what happened with this new tax bill. That's what they're still hashing out right now.
So just to be applicable to everybody here, you would start with an LLC if you did something. Like if you started a lawn mowing business like Mr. Fulks did very early. But then these are the next levels up, pretty much? Pretty much, more or less. A lot of them come into how you're going to structure it. Like if I was to start a real estate company to where I was going to take on shareholders, I'd probably be a C corporation. LLCs, limited liability corporations, and it depends also for the folks. The reason that you don't see me dumping all my houses below Folks Lawn and Landscape is because you don't put appreciating assets in a depreciating company. So everything in our company, like trucks, most of our stuff that we use to operate the company, slowly loses value. Houses gain in value. You don't put those type of entities in the same corporation. Make sense? So that's essentially what you're doing. As you grow, you might have to develop to a different type of corporation. So there's like, here's a fun one for you. Who wants to go have their meetings in Hawaii? This is what most guys do anyway.
So legally, by federal law, you're required to hold an annual meeting and record the meetings. Federal law doesn't tell you that you can't have that meeting in Hawaii. Whoops. So pay attention, do not ever break the law. I'm gonna leave it right there. Know your rules, but this is why you see these big companies having these big corporate events, and that's what they're getting all these employees to come work for them for, because they're like, these guys just took me to Hawaii. Well, they took you to Hawaii because they can write the whole thing off. Remember what Kramer said? They know what it is. So that's what it is. There's partnerships. The one thing I will say about this, because especially as a young guy, it can be a young guy and girl, it can be really tough to want to start something yourself. It's a little intimidating. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Unless you're just dumb like I was, which is pretty much what it boiled down to, then it's going to be intimidating. I have actually taken on business partners in 2 different businesses that I owned, and I would probably never do it again. It's very tough because you have 2 different minds about where you want to go. I'm going to use this as an example. When I started the real estate company, I had a friend that talked about real estate with me for years, and I had another friend that talked to me about it for years. So I went into business, and there was 5 of us partners when I first did the real estate company. I'd already owned Fulks Lawn and Landscape for 10 years at that point. So I'd already been developing companies. These guys didn't own any companies. They'd never hired anybody. They'd always worked for somebody. So they had different thoughts about how do you run your life. With that being said, when it came down to about 9 months into it, I had them buy me out. I lost $1,000 on the deal. I didn't care. I had them buy me out because we weren't moving anywhere. They shared different ideologies than I did. I wanted to grow. They just wanted them for what I refer to as hobby housing. And so I knew that I wanted to grow. So they bought me out, and that first month they bought me out, I closed the deal, and within 12 months, I had doubled my net worth on buying real estate. Several years later, I own 22 properties now. They own the same 3. That's an ideology. This is where you guys need to be careful too when you're younger. And I'm going to say one more thing about you guys being younger. Choose your friends wisely. Choose your business associates very wisely. And I told Tim this yesterday. I don't take this lightly saying this, but I guarantee you I've gotten rid of more friends than what you've probably had in your life. They don't share the same ideology. When I was younger, I was a bigger partier. I was around some really stupid individuals. There's no other way to put that. And they were not going down the road to success. Went to find out that one of the guys that I had been around was abusing his wife. Instantly cut that off. Yep. So, but it's something I didn't pick up on. Actually, it was my fire department training that I picked up on it because I noticed raccoon eyes, which you don't get unless your head's been hit into a wall. So I discovered some of these things, but be very careful with who your friends are. There's an old saying that only that the people that you spend, the 5 people that you spend the most time around over the next few years is who it is you're going to become. And that's true. So it's not just about who it is that you're hanging out with. What podcast are you listening to? What books are you reading? What TV shows are you watching? This is probably a lot of the boring stuff that you guys get in ethics. I'm going to roll it over to the real world. Not the real world, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that, to the business world. It's very true. The people that I get the most motivated about and that I become the most successful around are other business owners, other like-minded people about success. So if you want to be successful, you're going to have to hang out with successful people. You're going to have to hang out with people of like minds because you're going to push each other all the time to better yourself. If you hang out with somebody that always wants to be right here, you're always going to be right here. Okay? You might be a hair ahead of them, but that's it. So please pay attention to who you hang out with. This is the biggest thing that I see now, even with some of my employees. They're just very much so guys that kind of want to stay where they're at. And they get frustrated with me sometimes because, of course, I have a tough time communicating with them sometimes because I talk about this kind of stuff a lot. And sometimes they're not interested at all, as you guys can imagine. So just be careful who you hang out with. Sole proprietor is another one. We're not going to go into passive. Does anybody have any questions on this kind of stuff, by the way? No? Okay. It's the boring stuff, to be honest, the business, but it's stuff that you're going to have to know a little bit about. Did you have a question? No. Oh, okay. All right. I could show you those. Things that I would say you guys need to remember. So if you guys fans of Arnold Schwarzenegger at all? You watch his movies? Okay, awesome. Well, Arnold Schwarzenegger actually wrote these. I know he's getting old. Yeah, he still makes some good ones.
I know.
So, Arnold said, trust yourself. Remember what I was telling you earlier? You got to trust yourself. You're going to fail. Break some rules. You think society told me that I should have went to college, should have got the degree, I shouldn't be buying real estate? Matter of fact, 2 of my girlfriends told me that. One of them said I was crazy. The first one did, because I told her that I wanted to buy my house to live in. I was 18, and I wanted to buy a half a duplex to live in, and I was crazy at that time. And then I had another one that said I was crazy because I wanted to get to 10 crews with the lawn and landscape company. Of course, I had no idea what that meant. I just knew that 10 crews sounded cool. So I said 10 crews, and now I've come to realize 10 crews is actually very hard to get to. So with that being said, don't be afraid to fail. This is probably one of your bigger ones. Life is about failure. If you're not failing, you're not learning. If you're not learning, you're toast. This stinks because a lot of you guys, like I said, you get really bored in here in school. I mean, I was the same way. I was absolutely like brain dead by this time of day. I mean, if 5-hour energy existed back then, I would have been chugging one every day at 2 o'clock, easily. But don't be afraid to fail, guys, and keep learning. Ignore the naysayers. When you're younger, this is going to be huge. As you get older, you get more bullheaded like me. You start to care less about what people think, about what you do, which is good and bad, because sometimes you've got good mentors, so keep that open mind when you're talking about people that are around you that are worth listening to. Listen to them. But don't listen to guys that haven't been there and done it, would be my experience in business. Work like hell. Here's an interesting one. In the younger generation, we have about 50-50 was the last statistic I heard. 50% of us in my generation, which is just the one right before your guys' essentially, I believe, my generation has a lot of entitlement ideas. We believe that we're owed something in society. For whatever reason, I have no idea why. Well, you're not. And the world doesn't care. And it's not going to care. So keep working. Because the more you work, the more you're going to earn, the more you're going to grow. It's not even just about the money. It's also just about keep working because it's gratifying. It's dignifying to work. And give something back. This is something that he said, and every financial and successful person in the world will tell you you need to give something back. Because by giving something back, you're learning. Even more by giving back sometimes than you are about earning. So try and donate, and if it's not money, donate your time, too, to something, to teach somebody something. These are my 3 that I've learned in life. Be patient. We're young. I'm still just as impatient as you guys, if not more. Drives me nuts when the bank doesn't call me back the same minute that I called them. And I don't like it when I can't close on the house deal immediately, and I've got to wait 30 days. You got to be patient. Things take time. You have to grow. You have to develop as well. Be persistent and consistent. The biggest thing about success in your guys' marriage, your girlfriend, your boyfriend relationships, your relationships in business, everything is about persistence. If you stay persistent with it, you're going to grow. If you consistently tried to crank out an additional $500 a year in passive income, and you did that over 10 years, you would now have $5,000 a year in passive income. That's what persistence does for you. People ask me, how the heck am I able to travel and do the things I did? They ignored the first fact that I started when I was 15. They don't care about that. This is where you also learn to ignore the naysayers. And you just get good at ignoring them. Be willing to walk alone. For a while, when you guys are getting started, as you become successful, it can be very difficult because you're not, the statistics are not in your favor, I'll be honest. They're just not. The most people, as you heard, are on the employee side. When you start to develop to a different side, you start to kind of have different thought processes. You just think differently, you act differently, you talk differently with people. Most people think that I'm 35 years old, if that gives you an example. They actually thought that 2 years ago. Maybe it was the beard that I used to have.
How old are you exactly?
29.
Okay.
And so, but I can tell you this was a tough one to adjust to. I was from 12 kids. Then I grew up around people, so I got used to that. And as you grow up, of course, people move out, and then you're kind of by yourself. But this one, be willing to do. Because it's going to take a little while for you to find that core group of individuals around you too that are also in the same boat as you that you can connect with. And now I've started to connect those. When I've traveled, I've actually met a group of people that own businesses around the world, and we actually talk on the phone probably every single month just to catch up about life. And that's what gives you your personal contact that you need to just keep your mind going in the right direction. But be willing to do this. So guys, that's all I've got. If you guys have any questions.
We've got Jack Parker here with an important announcement for you.
Alright, our manager, good day.
It stayed the whole time? Is it good?
What's up?